Hi, my name is Phil Gardner and welcome to Fun with Boxes. Today I'm taking a look at the One Ring RPG starter box set from Free League Publishing. I really have a special affection for role-playing games, stemming right back to the early 80s when I first cut my teeth on Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, RuneQuest, Traveller and the wonderful Call of Cthulhu. Sadly, I've not played any RPGs for a great many years, but that does not stop me picking up the latest RPG system just to see how they play, and I enjoy reading through them just to imagine the possibilities they offer. You could call me sad. That would be okay. And being a long-time Lord of the Rings fan, as soon as I saw the Free League were doing a new edition of the One Ring RPG, this was a no-brainer for me to back and get some time ago now. On a rainy weekend here in Wales, much like every other weekend to be honest, I pulled my copy of the One Ring starter set off the shelves and took a good look through to while away the hours, and thought I would share with you what I discovered on this rain-soaked little adventure I had. But first, as is the tradition, let's take a Fun with Boxes look at what you get in the starter kit box set for the One Ring RPG. Well, as you can see, you do get a ton of stuff with this starter set. But let's start, as one always should, with the Rules Booklet. This softcover booklet is our introduction to the One Ring game system, giving us, as these sets always do, a condensed version of the full core rulebook that you can pick up separately. The Rules Booklet for the One Ring is very condensed indeed, more so than in a lot of starter sets I've seen over the years. In fact, it has only 24 pages, so this is a very slim booklet for sure. But its function is to act as a starting point for you to try out, and if you like it, then you know you will be in for a big treat when you inevitably will get the core rulebook, with the full rule set for you to enjoy. The hardback core rules book runs for 240 pages, just for you to know. If the slimness of this booklet stood out to me when I first opened the box, the other thing that stands out immediately is the quality of the product. The feel of the pages, the layout, the lettering, and small amount of artwork screams quality. So, as the rain gently hammered down outside, I settled in and quickly devoured the booklet. The rules begin with the obligatory example of play, which I always enjoy as these always set up how to play an RPG and highlights one or two of the rules and how they are actually used in play, which is always a good thing. As for the time period where the game takes place in Middle-earth, it is set right between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, encompassing 6 decades for you to travel the lands and have many great adventures. The starter set game is set firmly in the Shire, and as such it provides you with a simpler taste of the game within these limited boundaries. A far less dangerous setting for your introduction to the game, and with the focus obviously heavily on hobbits. There will be gentle adventures and plenty of time for food, before a little more adventuring, and then some more food and perhaps a little rest. So this really could be ideal for younger players, as the rules themselves actually do make note. Rather than a DM or Dungeon Master, we have a Loremaster, who will run the game for the players. So the Loremaster will be in charge of describing the setting and managing what happens to the players when they interact with the game world. And within a few pages, we are into the game mechanics, where we learn all about the action resolution system. The first important note is made here in that you only roll dice if you really need to. The basic rule of thumb is that you only roll dice if there's a possibility that a player's chosen action might fail. Otherwise, the players simply explain what they are doing and just do it. No slowing the game down with unnecessary dice rolling. And so the game suggests to only roll dice where there is danger, or where characters are trying to gain knowledge that is not immediately available, or where the characters are trying to manipulate a situation, such as trying to influence uncooperative Loremaster characters. The game uses 12-sided dice called the feat dice, and regular 6-sided dice called success dice. A set of dice is 2 feat dice and 6 success dice, and it's really handy if all players have their own set of these dice to play the game. Free League do provide a full set of dice with the starter kit, and you can buy more direct from them. You can always use any dice that you have lying around your house, but the ones produced by Free League have special icons engraved on them, which really adds so much while playing the game. The feat dice are numbered 1 through to 10, along with 2 special sides, one with the Gandalf rune and the other with the Eye of Sauron. If you roll the Gandalf rune, the action always succeeds, regardless of whether or not the roll actually met its required target number. Whereas, if you roll the Eye of Sauron, then the result counts as 0 when you are calculating your success attempt. And talking about target numbers and success attempts, all abilities in a game are associated with a target number, or TN, with players mainly making rolls based on their TN ratings for their strength, heart, or wits attributes. In the starter set, the TN of a character is calculated by subtracting 18 from the corresponding ability score. The lower the TN, the easier the task. When you need to make a dice roll, you need to know what ability to use dependent on the situation, be it a skill roll or a combat roll. Here is an example from the rulebook. Paladin Took is scouting ahead, and he has a chance of spotting a group of brigands who are setting up an ambush. Looking at his awareness skill, he has a rating of 2, and the awareness skill is part of the strength ability, so any roll here will use his strength TN, or target number. To make the roll, the player playing Paladin will take a D12 feat die, and then a number of D6 success dice equal to their awareness rating. So in this example, 1 feat die and 2 success dice are rolled, and their total value combined. If equal to or higher than the TN, the action will succeed. However, if it's less than that, the action will fail. In the example in the rulebook, the player rolled a 4 and a 5 on the success dice, and an 8 on the feat die, for a total of 17, easily passing and spotting the would-be assailants. Don't forget that if the feat die rolled the Gandalf rune, then the action will succeed, regardless of the total roll. And there are degrees of success. On the 6th side of the success die is an Elvish 1 numeral, which indicates that a superior result has been rolled. When rolling, if a player succeeds the roll, that is, met or exceeded the TN, and in doing so rolled 1 Elvish icon, then the accomplishment was out of the ordinary, a great success. If they rolled 2 or more Elvish icons, then the result was exceptional and memorable, an extraordinary success. And there are, of course, die roll modifiers that can apply to a character's roll, either positive or negative, dependent on the situation. The roll could be favoured for some reason. For example, if a character has an affinity for a certain task. Equally, the roll could be ill-favoured, if, for example, a character was suffering with some sort of limitation. When making such rolls, you roll 2 feat dice instead of 1. For favoured rolls, you use the result of the best rolled dice, and for the ill-favoured rolls, you would use the worst result of the 2 dice. Nice and straightforward. There could be bonus success dice added to a roll if circumstances dictate this. For example, if attempting something with a certain tool that would mean you are more likely to succeed at the task in hand than fail. Simply add an extra success dice as indicated. Again, the exact opposite could happen where the character is attempting something where the conditions are not best suited to the task, in which case the number of success dice rolled are reduced. Again, all very straightforward. And there are even more ways to manipulate the roll. All characters have a pool of hope points, and they may spend 1 and only 1 hope point to add 1 success die to their roll. Also, certain situations can cause a character to become inspired, and such a person would gain 2 success dice instead of 1 when they spend their 1 point of hope. Finally, there is one important special condition that can affect a character's roll. During their adventures, characters can become weary, and this will have a big impact on their abilities to perform even basic tasks. All characters have an endurance score, and this represents their resistance, and characters can lose endurance in many ways. When this drops to a level equal to or lower than their load score, they will become weary. This has a huge impact, as while a character is weary, any rolls of 1, 2, and 3 on the success dice are treated as zeros instead. So you need to keep an eye on your endurance and load scores as you play through an adventure. By the way, a character's load score represents how encumbered they are from carrying equipment such as war gear and wearing armor, which affects their endurance and in turn has the potential to make them more easily weary. So let's take a quick recap on dice rolls. All rolls are made against a target number or TN. On this table we see that the D12 feat die, we read numbers 1 to 10 as normal when rolled. However, if you roll a Gandalf rune, the result is a success regardless of what the TN was. And an Eye of Sauron is counted as a 0. For the success die, read 1 to 3 as normal unless you are weary, in which case they count as zeros, and read 4 to 6 as normal, but if you roll a 6, this has the elvish icon on the die. One or more of these indicates a higher quality of success. On top of this, some rolls may be favoured, in which case you roll 2 feat dice and use the best result. Or they could be ill-favoured, in which case you roll 2 feat dice, but instead use the worst result. And certain rolls may give you bonus success dice to your roll or penalties to your success rolls, which will mean adding or subtracting success dice from your roll. And remember the impact of being weary, where success die rolls of 1, 2, or 3 are treated as 0 results. And the dice provided with the game give you a visual reminder of this, with the 1 to 3 numbers not filled in and the 4 to 6 numbers in bold on the dice. Characteristics. The game comes with 8 pre-generated characters for you to use. There are no rules in the booklet covering character generation, so you will only be using the characters that come with the set. To generate your own characters, you will need to pick up a copy of the core rulebook. Let's take a look at Paladin Tuck II. Each character has 3 attributes: strength, heart, and wits. And each attribute is linked to a certain set of skills. For example, Paladin's strength is 3. From this, Paladin's TN and endurance are calculated. As these are pre-generated characters, everything has been done for you. The way the TN was calculated for each attribute is 18 minus the attribute value. So with a strength of 3, this made Paladin's TN 15. The characters in the starter set are tuned to be slightly more powerful than in the full rules. To generate characters in the core rules, you would be subtracting 20, making Paladin's TN 17 and not 15. And this threw me a little when I first read the rules. I'm so used to playing games where the higher a value is, the better you are at it. This is not the case with TNs. You want this number to be lower so that you have more chance of rolling higher than it. So in the One Ring, the higher your attribute score, in this example the stronger you are, the lower your TN score. That is, the lower and easier your target number is to roll. The other score under strength is endurance, which for Paladin is 23. Strength is a measure of how tough or fit a character is, how alert they are, or how imposing they are, for example. And underneath and linked to strength are 6 skills. The diamond-shaped boxes to the right of a skill indicate what rank the character is in that skill. For example, Paladin has a rank of 2 in awareness, meaning that when they use that skill, they get to roll 2 success dice along with the feat dice. If none of the diamonds are filled in, like ore, this means the character has no ranking in that skill and will only get to roll the feat dice when trying to use that skill. Finally, the square to the left is used to indicate if a character is favoured with a skill. As we can see, hunting is one of Paladin's favoured skills. So when hunting, Paladin will roll 2 feat dice and use the best result. Looking quickly at the 2 other attributes, we have heart, which is a character's capacity for emotion, empathy, and enthusiasm, and linked to this is the character's hope score. More on that later. Again, this has 6 skills linked with it and listed underneath. And finally, the wits attribute, which is how clever, attentive and ingenious a character is. And linked to wits is the parry score for a character. Again, more on that later. Underneath the attributes are a number of other important things for an adventurer. First, combat preferences, which work similar to the skills. If a character is proficient with a weapon, they will have a ranking level. For example, Paladin has a ranking of 2 when using a sword, and will roll 2 success dice, as well as the feat dice when using the sword. As with skills, if Paladin has no ranking, such as if they try to use a bow, then they would only roll the feat dice. Directly underneath that is everything related to combat, what weapons or war gear, as the game terms them, the character has along with all its stats, and what armour a character is wearing or what shield they are carrying, again with the relevant stats for those items. As we can see, Paladin is unarmed and unarmoured, so they want to be careful if they ever get into a fight. Let's just move across to the right of the character sheet for a moment. Here we record a number of important game stats, the current endurance and current hope of the character, along with the total load of war gear that they are carrying and armour that they are wearing. There's also a place to record any fatigue points the character has gained, but I think I'm right in saying you will find no mention of this in the rules booklet. Instead, it is referred to on page 10 of the Shire Booklet that comes with the starter set. Certain conditions will cause fatigue points to be added to the character for things such as going without sleep for long periods of time or travelling through harsh, unforgiving lands. These points are recorded here and are added to the load, meaning that the load of the character is increased and makes it easier for them to become weary. And talking of weary, should your character become weary, you mark it here, and also indicate if they've become wounded, which I will discuss later. Here you can also note any travelling gear the character has with them, or tools, items, or devices deemed useful to your character. For example, Paladin has a Tookish Wayfarer bundle, and the skill that this is useful for is noted in brackets after it. Should the Loremaster deem it appropriate, a useful item could be used by a character, granting them a 1d6 success bonus to whatever it is that they are attempting to do. So if Paladin was attempting an explore test, they could say to the Loremaster that they have the Tookish Wayfarer bundle. Could they use this to help them in this instant? If the Loremaster agrees, then they add a success die to their roll. Finally, at the top, we have the age, culture, and any distinctive features the character has. And the last 2 boxes on the sheet are used to record rewards and virtues the character has, which also has the Valour and Wisdom scores. On the reverse of the character sheet, we have some additional personal information all about the character. And as I mentioned earlier, there are 8 characters provided in the starter set, so plenty of characters to play with. Let's now talk about the 3 scores linked to the character's attributes: endurance, hope, and parry. Endurance. Endurance points are lost while engaging in strenuous activities or through harm, and should they ever drop to 0, then the character will lose consciousness and will wake up an hour later with 1 single endurance point. As I mentioned earlier, should a character's endurance drop to or lower than their total load, then they will become weary and suffer the effects to their success rolls until their endurance rises above their load. Endurance is of course regained by resting, and adventurers can perform a short or prolonged rest. With a short rest of an hour's inactivity, a character will regain endurance equal to their strength. This does not apply to wounded characters who do not regain any endurance from a short rest. Characters taking a prolonged rest, such as a full night's sleep, will recover all of their endurance. Wounded characters, however, will only recover endurance equal to their strength. We will discuss wounds a little later. Hope. Hope is a character's reserve of spiritual fortitude and positivity, allowing them to continue when others, physically stronger, have given up in despair. During play, characters can spend 1 hope point to gain a 1d6 success die on any roll, or to trigger the effect of certain cultural virtues. A character with 0 hope is unable to find any energy to push themselves past their limits. A single point of hope is recovered following a prolonged rest. And between adventures, characters recover hope points equal to their heart score. Finally, the parry score is used by the Loremaster and is the TN for all attack rolls made against the characters by characters or monsters controlled by the Loremaster. Before I move on to the last part of the rules booklet, combat, just a quick mention of two scores that are recorded on your character sheet, and these are Valour and Wisdom. Wisdom expresses a character's trust in their own capabilities, their self-confidence and capacity for good judgment. And Valour is a measure of a character's courage. Players may be required to make a roll testing their Valour or Wisdom, and the TN to roll against for Valour is their Heart TN, and their Wits TN for Wisdom. The process is the same as with other rolls. You roll one feat die plus a number of success dice equal to your rating. And now on to combat. Your adventures in the Shire are meant to be thrilling and exciting, but not life-threatening. As the rule booklet states, hobbits are supposed to return home with exciting tales to tell to their many relations and not be mourned for their loss. So do bear this in mind. And the combat rules detailed in the One Ring starter set are meant for adventuring in this setting, where your adventures are low-risk affairs. But there could be occasions where your hobbit will need to make a stand, and if pressed, here is how they will actually perform an attack, be it in close combat or from a distance with a ranged weapon. To attack, use the character's Strength TN modified by the parry rating of the targeted enemy. Using Paladin Took as an example, if they owned a sword and were using it to attack, they would roll one feat die along with 2 success dice, and they would be rolling against a Strength TN of 15, looking to roll 15 or higher on their dice. If their target had a parry of +2, then they would need to roll 17 or higher instead. If successful, the attack will inflict damage equal to the weapon's damage rating, which reduces the target's endurance. If Paladin was using a short sword, it would deal 3 points of damage to the enemy, reducing its endurance by 3 points. Remember that a character whose endurance matches or is lower than their load and fatigue will become weary, and furthermore, if they drop to 0, fall unconscious. These particular rules only apply to players' characters. All other characters and monsters controlled by the Loremaster do not normally become weary, but are eliminated upon reaching 0 endurance. Special damage. A successful attack could trigger special results if 1 or more Elvish runes are rolled as part of the attack. Each Elvish rune rolled can be used to trigger a special action depending on the weapon and type of attack. 1 rune could be spent using any weapon to do a heavy blow on the target, and that will cause an additional endurance loss equal to the character's strength rating. 1 point could be used using any weapon if the character is in close combat, to fend off the enemy by spending 1 rune point to add +2 to your parry modifier against the next attack that is aimed at you. Finally, if using a bow or spear or sword, you can use a point to cause a piercing effect that allows you to modify the feat die by +2 up to a maximum of 10, which could possibly trigger a piercing blow effect. Piercing blows. An attack result of 10 on the feat dice, or a result with the Gandalf rune, will mean that the character has performed a piercing blow. Characters hit by a piercing blow have to perform a protection test to resist being seriously wounded by the blow. And this roll is made versus the TN equal to the weapon's injury rating, with a number of success dice equal to the protection value of any armor worn. If the roll fails, the character has sustained a life-threatening blow and are wounded. Most adversaries are killed outright if wounded, but the player characters can resist being wounded once without serious consequences by checking the box on their character sheet, but receive a second wound and their endurance is immediately reduced to 0 and they will fall unconscious. Player characters heal from their injuries between adventures or within around a week, with a successful healing roll reducing this time period. As you can see, combat is dangerous, so think carefully before committing to an attack. Perhaps there are other ways to find a solution to things. You could talk yourself out of a sticky situation, or even run away. Sometimes it's not about fighting, but about what else you can do when confronted with threatening situations. Depending on how the conflict arises, it may be possible to start a combat with opening volleys with ranged weapons before the attackers meet them in close combat. And with all forms of combat, generally, the players will get to strike first and then their adversaries. So, that's how you play a game of the One Ring. But what else, apart from the slim rules booklet and the 8 pre-generated characters, comes in the box? Well, for starters, you get a great source book with a ton of detail and information about the Shire, from splendid maps and encounter tables, along with details about each of the 4 farthings and the encounters and peoples you may meet there. This 52-page booklet is beautifully illustrated with some striking double-page coloured art, sitting alongside the wonderful monochrome artwork that runs throughout the One Ring rule booklets. Complete with a history of the Shire, this booklet is a great little resource book for the Loremaster, and a good read too. The third and last booklet is firmly for the Loremaster's eyes only, and this is the 32-page Adventures booklet, The Conspiracy of the Red Book. This contains 5 adventures for you to use with the pre-generated characters, and again features the lovely maps and artwork you would expect from this game. Obviously, I do not want to give anything away about these adventures, but in line with the theme of the starter set, these adventures are light, playful affairs, focused on walking around the Shire and having small, low-risk adventures. With 5 adventures crammed into 32 pages, this means that there's not a ton of information here, mainly just the plot outlines and some character stats for peoples the characters will interact with. So I do feel that someone picking this up for the first time to run for their players may struggle a bit with the lack of detail and structure. But these are very light, simple adventures, just to get into the theme and world and to get used to the rules, before moving onto the full rules and stepping outside of the Shire into a world full of adventure and danger. To complement the booklets, we have a most wondrous double-sided map, which is nothing short of fantastic. You have the Shire detailed on one side, and then the lands of Iridio on the other. This really is superb. It's so well drawn and detailed. This is a fantastic product. I love maps, and I totally adore this one. Next, we have 30 playing cards detailing some of the war gear and armour in the game. The rules booklet, as I mentioned earlier, is a very slim booklet containing only the basic rules for how to play, so it does not have pages detailing the war gear and armour players may have access to. Instead, 30 cards are provided with a drawing of the item on one side and some basic information and game stats on the other. These are good quality cards and nice for players to have to refer to, even though the game stats information would be written on the character sheet and referred to that way. But the cards are an essential element to the starter kit because they are the only source of information on war gear and armour. Plus, they are great for players new to RPGs as a great visual aid and prop. There are 6 large square cards included in the box called stance cards. These intriguing cards, though, are for the full core game of the One Ring and not for the starter set, which strikes me as an unusual inclusion, though they can be used with the starter set to indicate visually if a character is in close combat or at range, if you are not using miniatures to visualize the battlefield, for example. These stance cards are great to have, especially if you are going to pick up the core rulebook, which I would highly recommend if this starter set tickles your fancy. They are double-sided, one side to show your stance in combat, and the other to show your stance whilst adventuring and roaming the wilds. Here is the adventuring side. Imagine there are 4 characters in your party. You can use this side to show who is the guide and in charge of all decisions concerning your route and supplies and when you would rest. One of your party could be the hunter, in charge of finding food in the wild. Another could be the scout, in charge of setting up camp and finding new trails. And finally, one could be the lookout, in charge of keeping watch as you journey through the wilds. This is such a great idea to have for an RPG. Each player having a card so that they can show exactly what stance they are in and how they would react to any encounters. And changing stance is simply turning the card to your new stance. Plus the cards also include some rules reminders too, which is excellent. Here is the other side that is used in combat. to show the 4 different stances your character could be in when combat occurs. One is for range combat, which is called rearward, and has, as with all the other stances, all the relevant rules noted for ease of reference. The other 3 sides are for close combat, showing whether you are in defensive stance, open stance, or a forward stance. These cards really are fantastic. I'd love to see this type of system used in other RPGs, an essential accessory I feel. And finally, of course, the dice. No RPG starter set would be complete without dice, and these are beautiful. But not only that, they come engraved with key information to use in play. Here is the feat die, the 12-sided dice that has the numbers 1 to 10 and the Gandalf rune and the Eye of Sauron. Obviously, you can use a normal 12-sided dice and decide what number will be the Gandalf rune and the Eye of Sauron, but I could not imagine playing without these dice. And here are the success dice. Here is the elvish icon on the number 6 side that indicates a special success. Again, you can use normal dice and know that if you roll a 6, then that is a special success, but it's far more satisfying to roll with the themed dice set. There are 2 more extra additions to this box set, and that is the wonderful map of the Shire printed onto the base of the box, plus then on the inside of the lid, a very handy summary of the dice rolls, conditions, and other useful information. Sort of like a mini Loremaster screen, as it were. A very nice addition, and one I missed when I first opened the box. So, there you have it, the One Ring starter set. The overall quality of production is fantastic throughout this box set, and I love the simplistic monochrome artwork and the clear layout of all the booklets. Nothing to fault at all here. There is one thing that could bother some more experienced role players, and that is the size of the rules booklet. It's a very slim booklet that provides the very barest of detail required to play the low-risk adventures included. And this is by choice though, and in fitting with what the publishers were aiming for. But it might put some people off. For example, the Alien starter set rulebook was over 100 pages long, and the Blade Runner rules book was 80 pages long. Here, with the One Ring, you just get a 32-page booklet. Just bear that in mind, and once you have digested all the content, you will understand why it's so slim. And the adventures provided are very basic, light and low risk, to match the setting of the game, where the focus is just on hobbits and the little adventures they could go on. And so long as you understand this, then you will not be disappointed. The Shire booklet is packed full of information. The war gear and armor cards and thematic dice are great, but the stance cards I think are really something special. I love these. And add to that this glorious big double-sided map. And what you have here is a great little starter set for this role-playing game. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan and into or thinking about getting into RPGs, then this is a great place to start. And as such, with very minor caveats, I would highly recommend it. Plus, if this, as I said earlier, tickles your fancy, then you must pick up a copy of the full core rules. This is obviously essential and is a wonderful big tome of a book. Again, with great production values. I just love the feel of this book, and the quality of the pages is just brilliant. And so there you have it. A Fun with Boxes thumbs up for this One Ring starter set. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Please consider hitting the old like button and also that subscribe button. That would be great for the channel. And if you would like to know more about the One Ring RPG, please let me know in the comments below. Or if you'd like me to cover other RPG starter sets, again, please let me know in the comments below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please take care and bye for now.